A slightly early Merry Christmas and welcome to the latest episode of Talking Tottenham with myself, Ryan Taylor and Alasdair. Talking Tottenham is sponsored by NordVPN. Happy Christmas, Ali. How are you, mate?
I'm all right. Merry Christmas to you. A little bit of an early one. We thought we'd kind of squeeze this out, as it were, just before
Yeah.
Christmas, because we've got a few things to talk about, not least the Liverpool game, but also some of the fallout afterwards. And yeah, the Fabio Paratici stuff, which is a whole kind of mess of itself that we can have a chat about. But yeah, looking forward to Christmas. A weird one this year for us in that we've got no Boxing Day game. I think I've probably, even stretching back to my reporting on non-league days and football league days, I can't even remember the last time I had a Boxing Day off. I think actually, I might be lying. I think we might have got one 2 or 3 years back when Spurs randomly didn't have one. But other than that, my family just don't expect me to be sat around the table on the Boxing Day.
So you've earned it then.
Well, I'd say that. I'll
I'd
claim
say
that.
so as well. I think you're right. Usually we associate the festive period with this kind of jam-packed, ridiculous schedule where we're always out of the house and on the motorways and in press boxes. But the way it's worked out really for Spurs this year, I think we touched on it in the last episode, but it's actually quite nice that the players maybe get a bit of time as well just to spend time with their families, and that's obviously welcome given the current situation. We were both at the game on Saturday, Ali. We're going to have to quickly touch upon it. But
Yeah.
you know what? I actually think of all the Spurs games I've been to this year, that was one of the better performances. I really do feel that way.
Yeah, I would say that probably shows a low bar we have.
Yeah.
that a defeat is one of the better performances. But I know what you mean in terms of, I mean, they just showed a bit of fight. And I think
Yeah.
that was what kind of helped them in terms of connecting with the fans, and the atmosphere was good. I mean, you look at the stats, they had 10 men for almost an hour, maybe that was more than that, including added time, and 9 men for the last bit of added time. But actually they had 15 shots at goal to Liverpool's 8. And it's like, okay, fair enough, you had a
Yeah.
go. Even before, I think some people have kind of suggested that before the goal Spurs were absolutely awful. Sorry, before the red card Spurs were absolutely awful. But actually Koulibaly had a hat-trick of chances before the goal, and Liverpool had nothing. Liverpool didn't have a single kind of effort before that. It was, I mean, you could quite rightly argue it's probably two teams that aren't at their best playing each other. And I think the most frustrating thing for me was they were there to be got at Liverpool. That is not a good Liverpool side right now. They really, they opened up a few times to Spurs, and if they could have just kept their heads, kept their collective cool a little bit, and especially their captain as well, and also, their playmaker, who they're now going to lose for 3 games, I think that could have been a win. And that's probably the most frustrating thing for me.
Definitely. I think one of my biggest takeaways from the game, obviously you saw me lose my head in the final stages, not because Liverpool were on the ropes, but obviously I had a deadline to hit, and there was so much going on in the game that it was quite hard.
We should stress that. We should stress that. Ryan wasn't jumping up in the press conference, in the press box, going, "No, don't score, Spurs." He had such a tight print deadline to turn around his match copy, and obviously, just a little kind of thing for people might not be interested. They might be. We kind of generally have to send a match report around the 85th minute of a match to the kind of the subs to put into the newspapers and everything. But unfortunately, in this game like this, where it's on a knife edge, you had Romero sent off late on, you had Spurs scoring quite late as well, and the chance of a second. I mean, your head must have been exploding at that point.
It was on Mars, mate. I think I actually said to you at one point, and I'm not ashamed to admit this, who got the goal when Richarlison buried it, just because, as I said, my head was on Pluto. But the thing that struck me about the game, and one of my biggest takeaways, was actually that Spurs, the way they started the match, if you compare that to actually maybe Fulham, just that's the one that I sort of always go back to because they were 2-0 down inside the opening 6 minutes. But there was a real bite to Spurs. And when I say bite, obviously, there was a little bit of a situation where maybe they were too emotionally charged with the 2 sendings off. But I saw in the opening exchanges of the match, the way the team was pressing and snapping into tackles. A lot of the time, we associate Tottenham with being too nice. Obviously, they've got a very nice manager in Thomas Frank. But I actually saw an edge that Spurs played with that I really liked. And I actually thought, where has this been all season? Because when they play with that kind of sort of they didn't respect Liverpool, and obviously they're the Premier League champions. Yes, they've been really poor this season, but I liked it from Spurs. You know, it was almost like this is our patch. Yes, our home form is disastrous, but actually it looked like they were trying to sort of make this a line in the sand. From my perspective, that's how I saw it. Obviously, we'll touch on Xavi, but he was key to sort of like.
I was going to say, do you think 6 days rest was a big point, kind of in that pressing and the freshness?
And also the frustration of Forest, I think, you know, tying into what you say there, to sit on that defeat for 6 days, I mean, it must eat away at you. We talked about on the last episode how even you, after a couple of days, it still sort of grates on you just because it's frustrating.
So
when you're a player, so when you're a player, you know, you're ready to come out the traps. And, you know, when I go to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, you know, sometimes before the match, when you sort of look around, you just think, how can you not be up for it? Like looking at this fabulous stadium, and it just looks lovely. You know, we'd all love to be out there, but you know, I don't think there's any excuse for teams, especially Spurs, starting slow at home. I really do not.
No, I suppose the argument is it a nice place for other teams to come, and does it kind of get them ready to play good football as well? I mean, the home record is just, it's disgusting. It's absolutely horrendous. That was their 11th home league defeat in 2025. And it's the most they've ever had in a calendar year in their entire history.
Yeah.
And only 4 league wins at home in a calendar year is their second worst tally since 1915. There's a lot more to 1915 that Tottenham fans will know about. That's kind of a significant year in the past, I think, for Spurs, and I think it was a certain team down the road too. But yeah, it's something that needs to be. So 2026 cannot be like that. If 2026 is the same, then you're just going to have a horrible year. I mean, at least 2025 had the boost of a trophy win in the middle there, but that's just not good enough for people paying their money to come and just watch mostly defeats. That's just dreadful. But yeah, it was.
Ali, can I ask you, when it turns to 26, do you believe the players will actually think it's a chance to wipe the slate clean? Because obviously we do look into sort of statistics and records, and it is it's like when people kick, bad habits they want to leave behind. It's like, do you feel it actually will maybe help the team sort of change their fortunes?
Can I let you know after the Sunderland game? I don't know. I'd love to think there's like some imaginary line in the sand that they cross over and go, 2026, yay, we're fine.
I mean, I don't know why I'm asking you, as if you've got some kind of crystal ball. But
no, I do actually. Yeah, no, I do. I shook a number 8 ball and it said not a chance. I would imagine it's going to be a little bit of a psychological thing until they just put a couple together. It could even be fortunate, goals off their backside in the 94th minute that wins a game and just starts to get their headspace right. But for some reason, look, it's not to say they didn't give everything those final 20 minutes with 10 and 9 men. And it actually reminded me a little bit of the Chelsea game a couple of years back when they went down to 9 men. But actually, the difference this time was that every time Chelsea looked like they could look like they could score every time they broke, because Spurs had such a high line. Whereas actually the other day, I kind of felt like Liverpool didn't look like they were actually going to get another goal. And even Arne Slot said after the game, it was like, it looked like they had 9 men and Spurs had 11.
The panic really set in, didn't it?
Yeah. I mean, fair play to them, but ultimately, as with both games, we're talking about glorious failure. You're talking about well done, but you still lost. But look, there are little bits and pieces in there that were positives, but I do think everything revolves around those 2 red cards, and they're probably 2 incidents we need to dive into, and also a certain tackle for their first goal, Liverpool, as well.
Yes, let's start with the sending off. You've actually said, Ali, on recent pods that you feared Xavi might be in line for a red, and obviously that sort of rung true. I know there was a little bit of sort of debate at the time within the press box whether it's a red, whether Xavi was kind of just trying to run, or whether he actually sort of left one on him. I think my personal point of view is that Xavi's foot, when it made contact with Van Dijk, was kind of up like this. And I think trying to run, it would maybe be a little bit more flat. I mean, I'm not necessarily saying Xavi's tried to do Van Dijk. Obviously, they're international teammates. But I do think is a case where he's maybe just thought, I might leave a tiny bit on him, but obviously in the VAR era, when Van Dijk's got a hole in his sock, it's just the sort of tackle that, unfortunately, in my opinion, you just don't get away with. What did you think of it?
I just thought it was clumsy and stupid. I think it was as simple as that. I agree with. I mean, I think even Van Dijk said. I think Slot said it. Everyone said it. I don't think there was any intention whatsoever to like you said, he's international captain as well, isn't it? It's like he's not going to do that. I think he is just charged towards him and has completely messed it up. It's one of those that could go either way. We've seen them. I mean, especially Spurs fans will remember Van Dijk on Solanke last season. We've seen it not given, and we've also seen them given. And I think the key thing is don't give them a potential decision to make. Don't charge in like that. And I know we were talking about the pressing and all that sort of stuff, but that's just clumsy and daft. And yeah, I didn't want to be right on that and say that I felt it was coming with Xavi, but here we are. And I think the most annoying thing for Frank, and probably the same for all of us, is that Spurs now have 3 games without a playmaker. It's so annoying. It's so frustrating.
He's not really a playmaker, but obviously he's at AFCON. He can play sort of a bit further forward. So it is an issue, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you're going to have to either play Bergvall further forward, aren't you, and try to have him as the 10, which doesn't really work as well, or you stick Kudus in the role centrally. But yeah, it's a right. It's probably just one of the worst players to get a red card. Even Romero, yes, I know he'll be a miss, but you can bring Danso in, and there's a logical kind of replacement there. But yeah, with Xavi, it's just like, oh no. And yeah, I think there's the argument that there's an inconsistency with decision making over that type of challenge. But yeah, it just goes back to don't give them a decision to make, really.
Definitely. What did you think of the Romero one, Ali? Obviously, it's not the first time that we've seen Kuti sort of get himself into trouble, and it was at a time when Spurs were really sort of pushing, but it didn't sort of completely, knock the stuffing out of them, because they still had kind of a little bit of joy at the end of the game. But yeah, as the captain, is that something that we kind of need to see Romero? Well, he probably won't ever stop, will he? It's just in him. That is how he plays the game. He's fiery.
No. He's got this really funny way about him, in that in some moments you could look at Romero they're trying to wind him up because they know he's a bit of a hothead and that sort of thing. And he'll do completely opposite. And he'll be like the peacemaker, and he'll be like really controlled. And you're like, okay, great. That's the leader. And then in other moments, it absolutely worked. And I think he's just frustrated at everything. And I should state, the most frustrating thing about it all is his first yellow card.
Yeah.
Because his first yellow card is the most ridiculous. I'm wrong, but I'm going to double down on being wrong. I'm going to give you a yellow card. Because look, their second goal, it shouldn't have stood. I mean, it is a clear push. And I know all this, it should be stronger, that kind of some pundits will come out with, but no way. If you have got, and there's like photo evidence, video evidence, if you're going up for a header, your feet are off the ground, and the person behind you gives you a 2-handed push on your back, that's a foul. It's as simple as that. So it shouldn't have stood. And then to kind of make that mistake, VAR to probably have the briefest of look at that. And then afterwards, the player concerned says, I was pushed, and like complain about it, and then get a yellow card for complaining about something he's quite right to complain about. That really frustrated me. And I think he probably had that burning inside him the entire game. That he was so annoyed at that. And yes, the moment with Konate was all very messy. I think I said I can't remember if it was you or George on my other side, in the actual moment, you could kind of see that Konate was one of those classic ones where they're tangling. And I do think sometimes the players not kind of trying to leave one on each other, but they'll make getting out of the tangle a very difficult procedure rather than just extrapolating themselves nice and easily. There's always a bit of oh no, if my stud gets you, oh well. And I think there was a little bit of that. And I think he got whacked on the head in the initial challenge as well from Konate from behind. So I think it's all of these things, but he's got to control his emotion. You can't just kick him, because even the lightest touch, the opposition player is going to roll around as if he's been shot by, whatever. And it just wasn't a great moment for him. And I asked Thomas Frank after the game about that. It's like, do you need a cooler head from your captain when you're pushing for an equaliser and goal? And it was like, well, you need a cool head from everyone in those situations. And he said, look, Romero's been brilliant, or Kuti, he's been brilliant for us for so many years now, and kind of you could see, and I think it was the same with Ange. There's a kind of a they don't want to criticize him because they know he is the main man. He is this kind of guy that when he is on it and he is setting the tempo, everyone follows. I don't think anyone wants to make an enemy of him, which is probably a
100%.
good thing to do. But it does mean that he's going to have those moments. I mean, his yellow card count is mad. I think he's almost at 8 or 9 now. Got the 1 red as well. He's in serious danger of he's going to have this 1 game ban for this. But also potentially he's getting close to a 2-game ban for an accumulation of yellow cards. It's just he's got to be better at that. He really has. And I know his fire makes him the player he is, but it doesn't mean you can't control it in key moments.
Definitely. The only thing that kind of frustrates me with that is that whenever we see this kind of sort of incident or Romero kind of sent off, there's always this sort of stuff online that, oh, Romero's a liability and all this. I mean, he's a World Cup winning central defender. If you can't see what a top player he is, then I don't think football's for you. Yes, obviously, we all know he needs to channel his aggression, but ultimately, that's part of what makes him so good. I think there was a point, Ali, in the second half where he went in so strong on Ekitike, but won the ball. And Ekitike, I think you said to me, you wouldn't want to, play up against Romero, would you? And Ekitike almost looked sort of, he was hurt. He sort of got his ankle clipped and he didn't want to show it because he was, maybe there's a bit of this France versus Argentina thing, but I just think that's what's great about Romero. The physical side, he's aggressive. And yes, he does need to kind of stop some of these silly yellow cards and red cards, but I just think that's part of what makes him brilliant. I think he's got the fear factor that, top strikers, when you go up against him, it's not going to be easy and he can, bully you at times. Just on talking about another Liverpool striker, Isak, obviously, the news has been confirmed that he suffered a fracture to his lower leg and an ankle injury. He's undergone surgery. I mean, Mickey has had his fair share of sort of, I'd say criticism over the past couple of days, which in my opinion isn't fair. But Arne Slot has come out this morning and basically, had a right pop at him. I'll read you the quote now. So Slot said this morning, it was a reckless tackle from Van der Ven. Xavi Simons was completely unintentional. If you make Van der Ven's tackle 10 times, you have a chance of being injured 10 times. I mean, where do you stand on this, Ali? Is that too far from Slot, really?
I don't think it's a tackle. I think that's the key element. I don't think it's a tackle. I think he's just sliding into block. Yeah. And I've watched it back just before we came on because I wanted to kind of refresh my memory of it. And he's looking at the ball the whole time. He's trying to get his leg in front, and it's just his trailing leg has kind of come around behind as well. I mean, the amount of times we see someone having a shot in the box and they might score, it might get saved. Mostly it's a goal, and afterwards they'll get kind of wiped out by the attempted block. And I mean, if you're going to kind of criticize people for sliding in and trying to block shots now, it's just
the game
mad.
Is gone, isn't it?
It really has. And very quickly, actually, back on Romero before we move off him, I should also state, I know we were singing his praises. He actually wasn't that great. In first half, he was really good. Second half, he started to go off a little bit. I mean, it was his pass against McAllister, wasn't it, that kind of led to this moment we're talking about now. But back on Mickey Van der Ven, he's. I mean, he was only a couple of days ago telling Gary Neville that Isak's the best striker he's ever faced. So he wasn't trying to destroy him or break his leg or his ankle or anything. He's trying to block the shot, and it's just unfortunate. We've seen it. We've seen so many of these tackles. It's
they happen every game.
Yeah, and this claim that Spurs are a dirty team. I mean, make your minds up. Are Spurs got a soft underbelly, or are they a dirty team? It's like. I mean, the one that I kind of was on, fun enough, was the
Isak.
Who was it on? No, it wasn't. It wasn't Bentancur. That's it. Who was it on? Was it Connor?
Kirkes,
that was it.
So there was two. There was the one that he kind of accidentally, well, only Rodrigo will know, but he kind of played a pass and his studs sort of caught Isak's knee or thigh, which that one has been sort of doing the rounds on social media, but there wasn't much in it. And then the Kirkes one where he kind of clatters into him. I think that's the one
that one for me was a bit like, I can see why you put that in videos. That looks like he's gone, I'm just going to do you, whatever. I'm going to get you. But yeah, I just think if we're going to outlaw and castigate people that are trying to block shots with last gasp challenges in the box and are trying to claim in any way that they're trying to injure the player, I'm sorry, that's just rubbish. It's just anyone trying to make a last ditch, but we see Van der Ven do it all the time. These last ditch tackles, that is part of his game, is covering.
It is. You're right.
And
It's one of them as well. I feel like any time the ball sort of breaks and a striker has got like 2 yards and he's pulling his foot back, the natural instinct of the defender is to fly across and, to make that block. I just wanted to add as well, I was in the mix zone after the game. Van Dijk was speaking to the Liverpool reporters. He was asked about Xavi Simons and he said that, there was conversations between them. Apologies for my dog who wants to interrupt.
If he's got an opinion on it, he can.
But Mickey actually came out the Spurs dressing room while Van Dijk was doing his interview, and there was a big bear hug and embrace between them. So, from my perspective, what I would take from that is there was no animosity from Liverpool circles that he's tried to do Isak. I think it was very much a case of Van Dijk probably knows better than anyone that when you try and block a shot, legs can tangle and the force of it can sometimes lead. It's just unfortunate.
Yeah, we're a society that likes outrage, don't we? It's often like if you actually ask the people involved, they're like, no, it's just part of the game. It's just what happens.
It's a bit like Sonny's all those years ago at Goodison Park on Gomez. It was completely innocuous, and everyone knows Sonny does not have a bad bone in his body, but he was
almost crying afterwards, wasn't he?
He was distraught, and obviously completely different incident because that actually ended up with, I suppose it's not because Isak is injured, but that was a real bad injury where it was kind of squeamish. And, even then there was still, a small percentage of people giving him stick. And I just thought, if you don't understand the game, unfortunately, if, you can't see that these incidents, unfortunately, they happen at every level. But yeah.
Ryan Taylor slates Arne Slot. I can see the headline there.
Well, I do think Slot should know better, really. I think he's probably a little bit frustrated that obviously his record signing is now set for a spell on the sidelines. Obviously, Isak hasn't done the business for Liverpool so far, and it was a classic Isak goal, really, and finish. So he probably is frustrated, but I think it's probably wrong to go for Van der Ven.
Didn't mention it after the game, I don't think, in his press conference. I'm trying to remember back. I don't think he said anything about it then.
I think it was probably because at the time, given that Isak walked off the pitch, I think Alison Becker also said, we think he's probably going to be all right. But obviously, since then...
So it's only a bad tackle if he's actually injured.
Well, obviously, it feeds into the narrative. There's more outrage. But yeah, I mean, there should be the same level of, those that are criticising it, even if he wasn't injured, they should still be sort of on the case. But yeah, I do think obviously the fact he's had to undergo surgery has led to this kind of, but it's another story that will blow over, I'm sure. Palace on Sunday, just quickly, Ali. I mean, you touched upon the fact that Bergvall might have to go and play as that 10. Palace obviously coming into they actually played tonight against Arsenal, but they've had loads of fixtures. Do you think the way kind of things have played out that maybe this fixture might actually be very much winnable for Spurs, or with this kind of siege mentality from Liverpool? Or
I think I don't know, just the way of Spurs right now that I don't think I see anything as winnable, which is an awful way to look at the team, but it is. They're very capable of losing any match. As they are very capable of winning any match. So, but I don't actually go in with confidence into games, which is never a good thing. I feel like this little run of fixtures actually is a bit of a tough one. But yeah, Palace definitely are having a little bit of a wobble, it feels like.
It's a good time to play them, really. I mean,
don't
I'm
say
not
that.
For
don't say minute. That.
No, but
I feel like you said that ahead of the Liverpool game as well.
I mean, I think it was Nottingham Forest, and
that
went swimmingly. No, but if I take the Spurs and Liverpool cap off for a minute, I think as a neutral from the outside looking in, there's been so much to appreciate about Crystal Palace under Oliver Glasner, but it's clear the squad isn't quite big enough to cope with the demands of European football. They've done well in the Carabao Cup. I think Mateta's got a knee problem that probably needs surgery. Munoz is out. He's so important to what they do. And obviously, it's the first time we've seen them actually well beaten. And I think, quite a lot of people were surprised to see the scoreline last Saturday night against Leeds 4-1. So certainly, if you're Thomas Frank, you look at this game, there's an underlying confidence. We need to go there and get 3 points. I think that's what I would say.
Yeah, I think they obviously, and Glasnow's been quite vocal about the squad and not having a strong enough squad, and they didn't build on it enough. And maybe that's starting to kind of bite them now after all of these European games. I presume they'll have had a similar-ish break, won't they? Will it be 8 days? There won't be anything in between. 7-8 days.
No, they play tonight in the Carabao Cup against Arsenal,
of course
don't
they
they?
do. Sorry. Of course
Yeah.
they do. I absolutely went out of my
And they
head.
also played on Thursday against Cups, but they played 2 different 11s because of the fixture schedule. Obviously, they had to play twice in 3 days, so they fielded a young side in the Conference League, and then
Yes,
Saturday was back to their kind of strongest side, but they're still depleted by a number of injuries. And tonight is a quarter final. Obviously, I'm sure by the time fans listen to this podcast, we may know the result, but to me, I would expect Glasgow to go strong because it's a chance to maybe, write a little bit more history. And then you've got that kind of break between now and the Spurs game, whereas Spurs actually get that rest.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, completely. I think in my head, I'm thinking you're not going to have football this close to Christmas Day on the other side of it, but actually, yeah, of course there is.
Yeah. So many games nowadays, it's impossible to keep on top of it all as well.
I know. I think that, I think there's a little bit of an advantage there for Spurs in terms of a freshness. And like we said for the Liverpool game, the pressing, they're going to have to do that. Recent years going to Selhurst Park, they've struggled, and that was against, teams that maybe weren't as good as this kind of Glasner version of Palace as well. So, it's I don't want to go as far to say it's it's a great time to play them, because I know I'll completely curse them in doing so, but certainly they should go there hopeful of trying to do something. I'm trying to think injury wise, if there's anyone likely to be back. Doggy maybe is supposed to be early January, so I don't think he'll be back yet. It's just making up for the loss of Romero and Xavi, isn't it, really? And how you do that and what system we see. I thought Bergvall and Gray again were quite bright. I think I'd like to see them continuing. I don't think there's probably much other choice right now if you're not putting Bentancur and Paulinho together. It feels like he's decided Bentancur over Paulinho at the moment.
I find that a little bit strange, if I'm being honest. I've not been hugely impressed by Bentancur.
He's very hit and miss at the moment, I do feel.
Yeah.
Paulinho feels a little bit more solid, doesn't he?
With Paulinho as well, I remember, once he made sort of that really great start, there was a lot of stuff online, pay the money now to buy him. But actually, the longer the season goes on, you do sort of think, logically, you need to look at that one. Because I think he's 30, isn't he? Or, so he's... You do sort of wonder how long top defensive midfielders can go on for. And, I do really like Paulinho, and I would like to see Spurs trigger that option. But I do kind of think the way it's going at the moment, do they maybe sort of hold fire and wait to assess it?
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of football to be played, isn't there? And I think the player that we kind of raved about like a month back or so is still there. I'm just intrigued to see what he does, because I like the two teenagers playing in there. I think they just bring this energy, and Archie Gray, I think, is just getting kind of more and more into his stride and just being a Premier League midfielder rather than a centre back, which he was never meant to be. And Lucas, I felt, was one of Spurs' better players at the weekend. I thought he really kind of took the game to Liverpool at every opportunity. Just maybe missing a little bit of quality in some key moments, but he'll get there. And I want to see a much better showing from Kudus as well. I thought he had a real off day. Some nice sort of moments in the first half, but as the game wore on, he just kept slowing play down. And the trouble is, if you've got a man less, you want to break. You want to break quickly, and that was the way to do it. And I actually felt that they probably looked more dangerous actually when Brennan Johnson came on, because he's got that ability to run on. I think his first move was whipping across into the 6-yard box, and Yeah, Kudus, I'm hoping we see a little bit of a reaction from him because he is an absolutely class player. And maybe it is that. Maybe it's that he becomes a 10. Maybe he becomes a 10 and we see Johnson on the right and someone on the left. I don't know, it would be Alasdair or that guy Matisse Tell apparently plays for Spurs. Maybe we'll see him once in the blue moon. But who knows? We've got a transfer window coming up. Both Tell and Johnson might not be at the club within a month's time. It's just, there's a lot of questions to be answered about Spurs in the next month, and I'm intrigued to see how they answer them.
There is, and there's also a lot of questions to be answered about Spurs in the second half of the pod. Ali, we're at the halfway mark. Do you want to talk to us about the benefits of NordVPN?
Yes, of course, of course. People know that this segment will arrive every week, every pod, because it is a service that I can, of course, extol the virtues of NordVPN because it's something that I've used many, many times myself. And I'm sure Santa, as he heads off to all the various countries in the world delivering those presents, I'm pretty sure when he's using his phone or tablet in the sleigh, he's looking at NordVPN and using that. Well, it's got to be because you're going to so many different countries. He might be wanting to watch something on a streaming service from abroad when he's in the UK delivering to all of us, and he might want to use his NordVPN to do that because you can switch your device to thinking it's in any country in the world pretty much. So you could be in the UK and watch shows from abroad. You could be abroad and watch shows from the UK just by making your phone or your tablet or your laptop, whatever, thinking it's in a completely different place. There's also security elements to it because you get NordVPN threat protection, which protects you from viruses, malicious malware, and phishing sites. And it also gives you privacy in what you're doing. It just stops nasty people taking things off of your devices that you don't want them to. You could essentially say it's premium cybersecurity for the price of a cup of coffee per month. And also, one NordVPN account can be used on up to 10 devices. And as I always say, NordVPN is the fastest VPN in the world. That means there's no buffering, there's no lagging, and you can stream your favorite shows from anywhere in the world without your bandwidth throttling. No one wants their bandwidth throttled. It must be a very frustrating experience. And on top of all of that, we can get you a great discount because you can get the best possible discount off your NordVPN plan by going to nordvpn.com/talking Tottenham. Our link gives you 4 extra months on your 2-year plan, and there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. In case you missed the URL, the link there, it's in the podcast episode description box.
Fantastic, Ali. Great images there in my head of Santa streaming AFCON while he's flying over Europe.
It may well be.
Some big stuff to talk about off the field now, Ali.
Yes.
Fabio Paratici. Sorry if my pronunciation is slightly different to yours.
That's all right.
I'm not quite sure if it's correct, but the big story is obviously.
I was told it's Paratici, I think.
Paratici.
I mean, you could have asked him, as you'll tell us. You spotted him in the mix zone.
I will. We'll come on to that. Obviously, the big story over the past couple of days, I think it actually broke on Saturday afternoon, just ahead of the Liverpool game, that Fiorentina are courting his services. Obviously, Spurs only announced that he returned to the club in an official working capacity in October. We know that he was assisting with some transfer matters on a consultancy basis. Ali, what's the latest just before we get into it?
Well, all the noise certainly from Italy appears to be that he seems to be leaning towards wanting to do that. That's what the Italian reporters are saying, and a potential 5-year deal, being their head of football, essentially just rebuilding a club that looks like it's in a bit of a mess right now, which kind of seems quite familiar. But from just before going on to do this pod, the latest from the Spurs end of things seems to be they've still received no approach from Fiorentina for him. So there's definitely some work that needs to be done there if he wants to get out. I mean, first off, before I launch into my kind of feelings on the subject, you did see him after the game, didn't you?
We did. So obviously, once the story broke, you do your initial checks. I know you're on top of this story, so I kind of didn't need to. But I know that Fabio always comes down to the home dressing room after every match that he's at. So I immediately kind of had that light bulb moment that, it's a good idea maybe just to ask him. obviously after the game, it was quite frantic with, as we talked about earlier in the pod, the getting my copy across. But I did get down to the mix zone, and we were kind of chatting to a few of the Spurs staff when Fabio made his way into the dressing room, and one of our colleagues sort of said, Fabio, are you staying or are you off to Fiorentina? And by this point, he was sort of about to enter the dressing room. So he'd pulled the door and he kind of sort of gave a non-committal answer. It was very kind of sort of like, as if to say,
a noise.
it's kind of, he was kind of laughing that we'd, put the question to him. Obviously, he's never going to, turn around and sort of, explain everything that's going on behind the scenes. But my kind of takeaway that it was clear there was kind of substance to the reports. Obviously, we didn't
shoot it down.
No, he didn't shoot it down. I think, if it was categorically untrue, then maybe he would have said, no, it's not true or whatever, because, there are so many rumours throughout, the world of football, and particularly around transfers and staff, transactions moving to clubs as such. But yeah, it was, it kind of, the feeling I got was that, there was probably something in the story. Obviously, at this moment in time, we still don't know what way it's going to go. And what I would also say is it's important to stress that, this story could develop while the podcast is going out. So if you see it's old news, then we apologise. But
it's not our fault.
Yeah, exactly. Ali, just give us kind of your initial assessment of kind of how this looks for Spurs, whether it would be frustrating and annoying to lose one of their key transfer figures ahead of the window, when Thomas Frank actually said that Spurs will be 100% active in his press conference ahead of the Liverpool game.
Yeah, I just want to very quickly. I feel like I've got images in my head of you doing a Love Actually style cue cards as Fabio walked by, but in Italian, kind of asking him.
I gave it the big one that I was like, I'm going to ask him, and it kind of got there. And where I was in conversation with someone else, I kind of the moment got away from me. Luckily, someone else asked him at the same time, but in my head, I was kind of, picturing this world exclusive. Fabio, snubs Fiorentina, and obviously we don't know what way it's going to go. But yeah, I'm glad someone did ask him.
Absolutely. So Fabio Paratici, right? Where do I start? As a look, it's dreadful for the club. Absolutely looks awful. You've just appointed him as a joint sporting director, and within 2 months, he's potentially heading off to a different challenge. I think from their side, I think it looks utterly dreadful. I think it's it's part of their big new structure. We've spoken about it before, but it's a club that is going through this huge amount of change. I think I counted it up. I think it's 13 new heads of department that have gone in the last 6 months or so, which is insane, the amount of people. And that's another thing where it's going to take a while for everyone to find their feet. That's just an incredible. I mean, we know we work in an industry that is constantly changing, and there's, so many different people kind of coming in and going out and everything, and how long it takes for new ideas to bed in and people just to understand what they're dealing with. And in a Premier League club, it just must be mad. All these different voices, all these cooks in the kitchen, as it were.
And relationships as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. So from that side, I don't think it looks good. I actually don't think it looks good from Fabio Paratici's side either.
No.
Bearing in mind, there's a bit of history there with Fabio and recent court cases and problems at Juventus and everything. And Spurs stuck with him. They stuck. They, in the face of everyone, kind of a lot of people, myself included, saying it wasn't a good look to have someone that had been involved or found, investigated for these certain things early on, and then later, I know he took a plea deal that is not technically pleading guilty. It's a complicated thing, but there's kind of two different sides to it. There was a global ban, and then there was this kind of case that went through the courts as well. And Spurs stuck with him. It was only he resigned from his official kind of previous position. As I think it was managing director of football he was. But then they kept, he was there as a consultant throughout the entire ensuing period. As soon as it was kind of fine with FIFA that he was allowed to do certain elements of his job. So Spurs stuck with him. They had an incredible amount of faith in him. Daniel Levy loved him. You know, he was a little bit kind of almost as far to say he was one of the few people that kind of Daniel Levy was in awe of, really. I think he really kind of just went with I mean, he allowed him to hire Nuno Espirito Santo. I mean, you know, he convinced Daniel Levy to make that decision. So that kind of shows that was the completely wrong man for the job, yet he still did that. So I do think there's a little bit of a like, what? They've literally stuck with you, and then they've given you this big job kind of thing, and then immediately your head's turned by going back to Italy. So I don't think that looks good at all. In terms of Paratici as an actual kind of force behind the scenes at Spurs, I think he is someone that bit of both worlds. I think he's not as I don't think he's this kind of savior that some people make him out to be. I've never ever thought that. I think there's too many misses there for that. Look, I'm not saying he's. We'll talk about his strengths. I think he's made some terrific purchases as well. But you know, kind of people always make out like he is like has this perfect record. Oh, it's you know, other than Nuno, you've got the Brian Hill disaster with you know Lamella going there and Brian Hill being loaned back to Sevilla for free like a season or two later. You've got Gallini, who I know he was telling everyone behind the scenes was replacing Lloris. He was going to be the next big goalkeeper. That was that. He was not. The narrator's voice, he was not. I mean, he brought Emerson Royale through the door. He brought Arnold Danjuma through the door. He brought Clement Longley through the door. There's not, you know, this list of amazing players. And I do think, and I mean, you could argue the jury's still out on Richarlison and Basuma. I know they had their big moments in the Europa League, but that's £90 million of player that there's some people that will say has that been worth it over the last couple of seasons. But yes, like I said, there's definitely good things he's done. He's got a good habit of going back to his old club, Juventus, and bringing in Kulusevski, Bentancur. I mean,
Romero even as well.
Romero. I mean, Dragusin may yet be a good player. Obviously, was from the Juventus fold as well. And also young players like Sarr, Doggy, Jed Spence as well. Even if Conte didn't want him, he's obviously turned out to be a very good player for Spurs. So definitely, I'm not saying that he is in any way not very good at his job. But what I'm saying is that he's not got this kind of spotless record that I think some people were like, let him cook, let him do the best. But what I was interested to see was how he worked with Langer, you know, and how they complemented each other because they're very different personalities. One is very much data heavy in Langer, and the other in Paratici is maybe a little bit more not hunch based, but you know, certainly has a different way of working. He's not as data led. So I was intrigued to see how that combined, and we may not get the chance. What do you make of it all?
No, I mean, I think you've summarised that perfectly there, Ali, in terms of the hits and the misses. I think obviously when fans see the images that you post of the headphones kind of dangling down, Paratici in the director's box at halftime on the phone, making these calls, parading the touchline before the game. Obviously, it is nice to see a figure so hands-on and sort of getting stuck into his job. I think that's something that supporters have really sort of resonated with and, you know, really like.
Talking to his family, though. He might be talking to his wife.
No, you're absolutely right. I think it's all about optics. But it's, you know, we do live in this world where fans are obsessed with sign-ins and who they might bring in. And I think, you know, he has been good for the club. And as you say, you know, the fact that only sort of 2 months ago, and I was actually in the first press conference with Frank after the statement confirming he was back at the club. And Frank had to answer some awkward questions about, you know, the suspended sentence and stuff. Obviously stuff that's completely beyond his remit. And he was saying, look, I know Fabio just through being here, but obviously, you know, journalists, you know, some journalists did question the ethics of, you know, his return. And also, you know, it's important to outline what you said just at the start of this little segment. Fiorentina are bottom of Serie A. I mean, a 5-year deal is reportedly on the table, but it seems like they're hedging their bets on Fabio to basically save their season. So it's going to be all in on the January window. We're now approaching, you know, the end of the year. We're seeing a few little deals done. We saw Fulcrum go to AC Milan. So a lot of the work for the transfer window is already underway. So I do find this kind of delay and noise in general comes at a terrible time for Thomas Frank.
Spurs wouldn't let him go straight away, surely, though. There'd be like a gardening leave thing, surely, or
exactly, and
notice.
they would likely surely seek compensation.
Oh, absolutely.
Given the timing of it, so a delicate issue. I think it seems as though from the outside, Fabio has been speaking to Fiorentina, and he's yet to actually sort of directly communicate to Spurs whether he wants to go. I mean, we don't know. That's all behind the scenes stuff. But I just think the timing of it is horrendous, as you say. And Spurs, it's clear they do need a couple in January, or at least one, a forward. And you do kind of question, how it will kind of hinder their approach to January as well.
Yeah, I'd be stunned if they don't say, right, well, you're working, definitely through this window, sort out this window for us, set up what's to come in the summer, and then maybe you head off there at the end of the season or something, because that would
But
be
obviously they could be relegated by then. It's like,
well,
I mean, that's not
he'll have a big
not
project in his hands, haven't he?
Yeah, I mean, what I mean by that is, would it be of the same appeal if Fiorentina are in Serie B next season and maybe don't have any money?
But that should be
obviously,
Spurs look out.
No, of course not. I mean, Spurs have to look after number one here, and I think it's clear the immediate priority is that they need to strengthen the first team. Just on that, Ali, obviously, we're heading into the window now. I know fans are always eagerly awaiting updates from yourself, but it's kind of been all quiet so far. There has been a little bit of talk regarding Antoine Semenyo, who we do expect to kind of communicate where he's going to go in January because of that release clause that expires on January 10th, I believe. I saw David Ornstein was reporting the other day that Semenyo had politely rejected Spurs.
Did he write a letter?
Yeah, I think he probably let them down gently. If that's report is obviously accurate, I mean, with David Ornstein, we know he is incredibly reliable. Do you know anything about Semenyo, and is it fair to say at this moment in time that is a pipe dream?
Well, let's be honest. As I know it sounds awful to say, but right now you're not going to look at Spurs when you've got the likes of Man City, even Man United are kind of in a better position despite everything that they've kind of gone through.
But would you want to play left wing back?
I know, but it's stature with United, isn't it? That's what it is.
Yeah.
There's so many players that see it as this grand kind of club. And Liverpool might still sniff around him as well. I think maybe they'll especially with the Isak news and everything, maybe feel they need another attacker up there, even though I know they're not like for like. But and obviously Salah, maybe Salah's the main one, and potentially what happens with him.
No, it's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, with Spurs, it's just it's so frustrating. But you kind of can't help but wonder, why didn't you go all in on him last summer?
Summer,
try and get him then. And now it feels like everyone's just seeing how good he is. And yes, he'll go somewhere. And I don't think Spurs will stand even a chance. And I think they will politely take their letter of thanks but no thanks, and they'll head off and they'll look at other targets. I still wonder if they're going to, sniff around Slovenia still, Slovenia at City, because obviously it hasn't really worked out for him at City. I still feel like if that was a player you originally wanted, you go back in, and maybe that's how it works. Maybe City gets Semenyo, and that's the way.
So there could be good news.
It could be.
It might end on a better note.
Yeah, exactly, and not the note of polite thanks but no thanks. We'll see. I'm still intrigued to see. I think the Solanke, I know we say it every week, it feels like, but Solanke, when he eventually hopefully comes back, I do wonder how that affects our attacking options and what they do.
Yeah.
And I think, as we kind of touched on earlier, the Brennan Johnson stuff, with you've got Palace are interested in him, you've got Villa have shown some interest, although I don't know financially how much wiggle room they've actually got to do anything for him. And there's a load of other clubs, from what I understand, in the Premier League, outside the Premier League too. Actually, very quick one on Brennan Johnson. How do you see that? If they were to sell him, is it selling someone who's an asset and has been underused, or is it selling someone at the right time for the right price, which Spurs maybe haven't been great at in recent years?
I think to sit on the fence, I think you don't truly know until you see how Brennan would maybe do at his next club if he were to leave. I think obviously sometimes we do see players sort of go on and the grass isn't greener, or sometimes they go to another club, find their feet, and actually fulfil the potential that we saw in them. So it's difficult. I mean, someone like an Aston Villa, I think Unai Emery would absolutely tap into Brennan's abilities and qualities. I would see him scoring lots of goals for them. Same with Crystal Palace, really. I mean, a slightly different tactical role, probably playing sort of behind the striker as one of the two tens, but
which I've been
it's
calling
clear.
out for at Spurs. I'd love to see him playing off the striker.
I would as well. And Ali, in the press conference last week, I'm sure you will have read, but Thomas Frank was asked quite a few questions about Brennan's future, and quite directly, would you like him to stay, and also would you stand in his way if there was an offer that made financial sense? And he said he wants to keep him, but he's been an unused sub in 2 of the last 5 games. It's like we need to see that you do actually believe in him. And if I'm Brennan, I'm not going to stick around under a manager that quite clearly doesn't fancy me. So a really difficult one. And also, given the amount of money that Spurs paid to Forest, you don't want to take a significant hit on him. I know, obviously, his contributions were worth probably a lot of money financially last season, especially, obviously, the Europa League. But you're not going to take it. I think me and George Sessions were talking about him. You're not going to take a massive hit on him. So it would still have to be, a considerable amount of money. And clubs like Palace, with all due respect, it's very rare they sort of drop 40 million or 45 million on a player like that. So I don't know. There's so much to weigh up, even with, Tell and Alasdair would a loan maybe be beneficial for them. I think it ultimately just hinges on who's available. And if selling Johnson can lead to a kind of a marquee superstar signing, then maybe it's worth considering, but I still like him.
Yeah, I think there are 2 sides to it. Look, if Thomas Frank has said, I'm not going to play him, he's not in my plans, despite the fact I wanted to sign him for Brentford, he is not in my plans going forward, then absolutely, I think, and the player wants to go, I think the deal probably has to be done. Like you said, I don't think you get anywhere near the 48.5 million they signed him for from Forest. I think you probably, I don't know, just off the top of my head, maybe you get 30, 35 with add-ons that push it to something like 40, maybe from someone. But like you said, who kind of out of the group of those clubs splashes out on him for that kind of money? I mean, he's still, what is he, 24? This is not a player that has reached
a great age, isn't it?
Yeah, he's not reached his prime or anything yet. I think it would. Look, I know not a lot of people agree among Spurs fans, but I do feel like if you use him in the right way, as Postecoglou did last season, you get a player who's your top scorer. You get so many goals. It's just about getting him in the right positions. And I don't think Thomas Frank, and it does bewilder me, a club that has, I think they've scored 13 goals fewer than last season at this point. And it's no shock. They're not playing last season's top scorer. It's like, it's not rocket science where the goals have gone. So I do find it all a bit baffling, but there you go. And I do think the right-hand side having Kudus and Johnson as options, I think that's I like that. And you've got Decky to come back as well. I think that's strength. I think that's quite having different options for different matches. And I think if you lose him and then sign a left winger, then you've got Alasdair, Tell and players like that who are better on the left anyway. Probably that's a more natural position. I think you're kind of almost overloading on the left than you are the right. I don't see why you can't have both. Keep Johnson, but then again, I go back to my original point. He has to play, and if Frank's not going to play him, unless there's an injury to someone, then I can absolutely understand the player probably thinks, well, why should I stick around? But it's Spurs. It's they kind of do this. They rotate and change managers so much who have differing styles and different needs that you constantly have a squad that's not fit for purpose because it's set up for a different manager. And they're constantly having to rebuild and reshape and retool. And it doesn't really lend itself to any kind of stability in the playing squad. But yeah, we'll see what the coming weeks bring. Who knows? And hopefully it doesn't happen. But if Kudus were to pick up an injury, suddenly Brennan Johnson becomes really important to Spurs. And that's what I mean. That's how thin I feel the squad is and why I think you're taking a risk there. And I do think he goes somewhere else and scores a lot of goals.
From what you understand, Ali, is there funds available? And also, are Spurs okay in terms of PSR and things like that?
Yeah, PSR, I think they're pretty fine for the moment. In terms of funds, the next generation of the Lewis family, excuse me, there's been a lot of kind of backing there. And I know they pumped the 100 million in, didn't they, as well? And there's been the promise of more to come. So this is going to be a real tester of a window, because it feels like the backing's there, feels like the will is there to want to get deals done. Like I said, I do think they've kind of stuffed themselves in a sense that they're in a position where someone like a Semenyo now looks at it and goes, "Nah, you're all right." And I don't think that's of any benefit to them going into a window. But they're just going to have to do what they've never really wanted to do in the past, is that's maybe pay over the odds to try and make up the shortfall of reputation right now, and how they appear to the outside world and players. And they're 14th going into Christmas. It's like, it looks dreadful for any player going in there, but essentially you've just got to get it far enough to say, come and see the stadium, come and see the training ground, it's really nice, honest. Honest, it's really good. And lock them in a room with Romero, and won't let them out until they sign. But yeah, it's the post-Levy era. We don't know what a transfer window is like in the post-Levy era, and we're going to find out. And I know there will always be some playing down of it, because if it's a January window, it's more difficult to get players. We absolutely accept that. But it's a window they're going to be judged on, and they need to have a squad for the second half of this season, while also boringly taking into account those European squad regulations and rules and all that sort of stuff. So they are going to have to replace players. There are going to have to be players that go out the door as well. And that's why kind of the Brennan thing, he's a homegrown player as well. It's a bit like he fits in the association train category. So you can only really put Solanke in there, unless, you went splashed on a big, I know Spurs fans would love Morgan Rogers, but I feel like he's kind of, again, taking himself out of that category of gettability now, especially after performances, and his price tag just, but there you go. It's a big window, and all eyes are going to be on them. It's going to give us a lot to talk about over the coming months.
Definitely, we'll look forward to that. I really feel like this is a crucial window for Spurs, in the sense that if they weren't to improve the squad, and as a result, results don't improve on the pitch, you look at the likes of Mickey and Kuti and think, at the end of the season, if they've got no European football and there's no kind of clear direction of where the club are going, if there is interest from, some big name European clubs, would it, affect their thinking? So I think that's why it's so crucial. And as Ali said, we'll have lots to discuss in January and to get stuck into, and we'll really look forward to that. Thank you for all your support so far on the podcast. It's been great to join Ali and get things back up and running. Ali, you're at the press conference today, aren't you, ahead of the Palace game?
Yeah, we've got our last kind of pre-Christmas chat with Thomas Frank ahead of Palace. So you'll see some bits come out from that today, and you'll see some of that kind of saved a little bit as previews ahead of the Palace game. So keep an eye out for that as well. And I'm sure a certain Fabio Paratici might be asked about, and maybe some transfers too.
Definitely. So you be sure to read Ali's stories and the every word that Thomas Frank says on the football.london website. Ali will also be at the game against Palace, and then heading into the new year, I think I'm also at the Sunderland one as well. Thank you all for listening. We hope you have a great Christmas with your family and friends, and we'll be back again very soon. Talking Tottenham is sponsored by NordVPN. To get your best discount plan, go to nordvpn.com/talkingtottenham. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, and the link is in the podcast description box below.